Viva women, viva!
Viva!
Viva women, viva!
Viva!
Viva solidarity, viva!
Viva!
Phambili ngabomama, phambili!
Phambili!
Wathinta abafazi!
Wathinta imbokotho!
Wathinta abafazi!
Wathinta imbokotho!
we're still waiting on a couple of folks, so we're going to switch the agenda. Miss Barbara, you don't mind being up next to you? Yeah, we're going to have you go next if that's okay. You're going to be introducing the ambassador. So, Mel's coming now? There she go. Okay. Joined us, and we're moving to the next panel. And this morning was wonderful, right? Great conversation, right? I thank everybody who participated. The one thing I will ask is for South Africa to stop begging, because we're going to work on it. We're going to work on taking... So they really want us to go to South Africa and do this convening in South Africa. You know. So we're going to need a lot of prayers on that one. So we're going to move to the next, this next panel. And I'm going to hand it over to Melanie to introduce our panelists. Thank you, Melanie.
Whew, thank you, Sarah. I was watching, and we had every three things, and I'll just tell you, this morning was powerful. You know, even just being able to look at it from here. But we're going to move swiftly into this conversation with some of our national partners. When I was talking this morning, I was talking about the fact that what we try to do with the Black West Roundtable, we're also, hey, there was God. We also make sure that we're not reinventing. There are sisters who are doing this work, who've been doing this work. And so what we try to do with the Black West Roundtable is build, yes, sister community, but also lift up sisters who are doing the work, right? And so this is what this conversation is about, for them to tell you it's 10 after 2. Is that what we have? So we're just a little bit behind, but to be able to just talk to us about what they're doing and how we can support their work. Is that all right? So we're going to start with Felicia Davis. Felicia is the director of the HBCU Green Fund. She sits on the board of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. She helps to lead the work of what we do around civic engagement in Clayton County, Georgia. She is a mascot for Clayton County, Georgia. Okay, where she go, you know, she is making sure she takes care of home. And then following her, if she's in the room, Crystal Jackson. Okay, Crystal Jackson. And my understanding, everybody's kind of doing community, so we were not going to come down. And following her will be Crystal Jackson, M. Jackson, founder of Mosaic Genius, who's doing some phenomenal work. The first time that I went to, was it South Africa where I went with you? Yep, was the first time I went to Ghana, but the second time I went to Motherland was for the World Conference Against Racism. And this sister right here was running around talking about climate change, and we were like, girl, what you talking about? This was in 2000. Yeah, 2000, because that was 2001. But there was an organization called Black Leadership Forum, and she was able to, it was where all of the national civil rights leaders were a part of, and we created and developed the first, and Dr. Joseph Lowry was living at the time, and he was the chair, and Dorothy Height and Dr. Height and others, and created the first report that came out from civil rights leaders around climate change. Am I right? And so we know now, fast forward, you were not off. I was going to say crazy, but we all, but we're going to let you start, and then Crystal, and then we'll go from there.
So I think we have mics. So thank you so much. And just to flashback quickly to 2000, it was the Black Women's Roundtable that sent. Okay. Yeah, because I like going up anyway.
Okay,
Short. Okay, so I got to go from 2000 all the way to 2024 in a quick bit. So since I was on climate change in 2000, there's, from my own perspective, I feel a great sense of failure, right? Because in 2000, I knew this was the quintessential problem of my lifetime. And so I was going around, well, I didn't do a great job of convincing others early on, and that's others in my community. However, I can say that the Black Women's Roundtable actually sent a delegation to The Hague in 2000. So that one was Sonia, and Letitia went to Copenhagen in 2009. So the Black Women's Roundtable has been on the climate agenda basically since day one. And what we have been able to do, those of you that have followed the UN proceedings, you will know that prior to 2005, 2006, there was no women's constituency within the UNFCCC. So Gender CC, Women for Climate Justice, were instrumental in getting that constituency, which was instrumental in advancing women's voices. Women experience climate and climate change differently. For in the U.S., the poster child for us was Katrina. So yes, many perished. The vast majority of those that perished were women. So, and then if you go around the world, we tend, when you don't have gender equity and balance, you get male-driven solutions. And men think like this, oh, alert the men, and then the men will go help the women and children. If men get alerted, nothing against my brothers in the room, but when they get alerted to hurricane is coming, typhoon is coming, they go to higher ground. And somehow, it's not that they don't care about the women and children, because when they get to the mountain, they do think, oh shoot, the women and children. But if there's not time and the women are not warned, they tend to perish. So that's the work that I've done. And now fast forward. About 2 years ago at a UN meeting in Scotland, I looked around, there weren't a lot of young African young people. I was like, what is wrong? Let us organize. So since COP26 in Scotland, I've now cultivated a sub-Saharan African network of young climate advocates, male and female, across 20 countries with active projects in 14. And that goes from, if you name a country, we're there and we're working there. For those of us in the U.S., I just shared that there are 1 billion African young people that are 30 years old or younger. So if we look at what is coming, what is emerging, so for me, my kind of Martin Luther King mountaintop moment, I may not get there, but we know what's coming. And our children are brilliant, they are educated, they are making bricks without straw, they are making solar out of things that we didn't know was possible, and they're doing all of the innovative things that we see here. And so our role, I believe, is to make that bond. So for any of us that have gray hair, some of us hide it, but some of us are fully natural. Yes, but anyway, for those of us, for that group, all we have to do is to lay it down for them, right? To lay it down for them with love, with all of the wisdom. Across the continent, what I find, there are not a lot of gray-haired people. So that puts the value on our wisdom is even greater. So the Black Women's Roundtable, organizing women globally, which was my dream, but it took Sarah and Solandra and some others to bring it to fruition. But I can say, Melanie has said, I don't know about getting on a flight for 20 hours, but I will support you. And so it is because of that, and that BC Saka, if anybody knows how powerful it was to do that in 1996, right, when everybody didn't get it. So it is under that vibration that BWR went forward. And we have done amazing work. And now with this group, I can't even, I think it exceeds my dream for what BWR could be. And it's manifesting. And so I think, Melanie, I put a charge to us to come out of, I won't be here until Sunday, but we must come out of this with actionable items. So we have to think about, what do we need to do? How do we connect and communicate? What kind of budgets do we need? And how are we going to get it? So that the weight is not on a Melanie Campbell or a Felicia Davis. It's how are we collectively, so that we take care of the DR, right? We're not going to have people breaking down our meeting because we didn't take care of something we can take care of. Sugar plantations, we can handle that. So we need to handle our business, just have that litany of what are the things we're going to eradicate, what are those we're going to build, right? And we have the list, and we're going to get busy, do that work.
Thank you, Felicia. Crystal Jackson, come on down, sister. Yes, it's easier so that everybody can see you. Yeah. And I will say that this is not the last time we're going to get together while we're here. There is a breakout for the first time on Friday afternoon, a global empowerment working group strategy meeting from 2:45 to 5 o'clock. So we will have an opportunity. The Black Women's Roundtable has 4 strategic platforms. It's economic security and prosperity for women and girls. It's education. It's economics. What I messed up. Health and wellness, yes, and global empowerment. And so what we're doing in the afternoon on Friday is breaking out around those pillars, plus there will be a civic engagement one and a couple of other ones. But do know that this conversation will continue, and it'll continue in the hallways and in the restaurants and all as well. But we do have a formal breakout. And when you see that, I want to make sure we didn't say it. Crystal Jackson, right? She's been trying to get me on the plane. I'm covered. And so I'll tell us, because I've been, you had me come to a retreat in New York about 2 years ago, right? and she was laying out what her vision and working with and what her spirit had her, that all that she's doing domestically, she was taking that globally. And so tell folks about what you're doing. It's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Melanie. I really appreciate it. I guess we'll start with 2 years ago, we hosted a retreat in New York, outside of the city, and the focus was on racial healing. And and we talked a lot about the healing that needs to happen amongst us, right? All of us are living the ramifications of European domination. And there's no other, like earlier when we were in here and talking, like I wanted to weep just thinking about the suffering of our people around the world as a result of European domination. And so, when I approach this work, and Melanie can tell you, I'm always centering us because I care about us. And so the focus, we started taking small groups over to different parts of Africa. And the reason I curated the groups this way, I took people to go see themselves. So I didn't take them on a poverty tour. I took them to meet the version of themselves on the continent, and it has been life-changing. And I have to tell you, it's changed my life, right? Because I grew up in a home where I was exposed to Africa, but it's something to sit and see and be with your own, right? And to be affirmed in that space, but also to learn. And what we realized as Black people in the U.S. is that we've been robbed, right? We've been brainwashed. And to be there and see the genius, and I was like, Africans are far more cosmopolitans than Black people in the U.S., right? And so I'll just say that, I'm willing to have the fight outside, right? But just what we've learned. So that was one thing. So that was the whole healing part for me, to go to the Elmina and all of that. But I also will say this. In the midst of the social and economic upheaval in the U.S., knowing I'm African has been what's kept me sane. So I'm going to say that. So out of that, we, during the pandemic, I was having a conversation with a sister, and we were talking about her work supporting the continent. And my work every day, I work all day, every day to create access and opportunity to capital for Black people, people of African ancestry. So I do that all day, every day. And she started to talk to me about what it meant to be a young African entrepreneur on the continent. And when she said to me, Melanie, that young African entrepreneurs have to get to Paris to pitch, when I hung up, I wept. How humiliating that you have to go ask the one that has pillaged and robbed and colonized and stolen from you to invest in your business. And painful. So even the process, so it's not just like in the U.S., I can just hop on a plane and go to San Francisco or New York. There's a whole process people have to go through. It costs money, and it's not easy. And so I was really convicted. And so what I've started to do in the small groups I take over, we're now investing in young entrepreneurs. And I think it's important that the capital comes from us, not China. Nothing against China, not India, but we need to be the ones making those investments. And so we're standing up tech studios in Egypt, Ghana, Botswana, and Kenya. Yes, and I have to say I'm appreciative of the Hilton family for their support in this endeavor. And our intent is to help create a digital workforce, young Africans that do not have to leave their country to make a good living. That's right, that they can stay home and make a decent wage, and they can shift the trajectory of their families and connect us across the diaspora. So I am so grateful to be here with you and to learn, and I'm available afterwards to talk and all those good things, and happy to take anyone over with me when we head back. Yeah, that's right. But I'm super, super grateful for each and every one of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Crystal. now we have two more dynamic sisters that are doing awesome things every day. That you see, what you see on the outside in front of the camera is one thing, but what they do when the cameras aren't on is what really tells you. And it's so in I believe divine order that I have both of you all coming up. You know, we didn't plan it this way, not together, but you know, back to back. So we're going to hear from our sister, Dr. Claire Nelson, who I have known from the whole entire time I've been here, who I met her. It's Marcia Johnson. Blanco, maybe I think, is when I met all y'all about the same time, and Dawn. I think we all met about the same time when I first moved here. When you all started the Caribbean Heritage Month, yes, but we were doing policy. We were doing training. So fast forward, we're in this room. Now think about it. Now we ain't been in. We have, the three of them. We haven't been in a room together in over a decade. So God there's something going on. Something going on. So I'm sitting there going, woo, cheers, Rev. So let me focus on what I'm informing, but I'm just full and happy. I'm so excited and feeling joy. But Dr. Claire Nelson, Chief Ideation Leader of the Futures Forum. And as I said, she is the founder and president of the Institute of Caribbean Studies. Following her will be our awesome sister, Barbara Perkins, president and co-founder of International Black Women's Public Policy Institute. And I met her when she was going to graduate school, and this was her project with our sister, Carl Llewellyn, came to my office, and they were doing this thing. And I know that both of you all do a lot to from your family's heritage countries, right? And when things have been going on, and even not from, I know Haiti, you've done a lot of things. So I want y'all to share a little bit of that. I know I will need help from Solandra and them to tell me the timing, because I don't know, Barbara is the ambassador. Yeah, okay. So what we'll do is, once you all finish there, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce the ambassador, and we'll keep it moving. Is that all right? Okay. Dr. Claire Nelson. Sister.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Just to say to my South African sisters, my one time in South Africa was the UN World Conference on Racism, when I was a mole between the NGO movement and the international financial institutions. That whole clause you see on development finance and racism, the clause, that whole section was drafted by me when Gay McDougall was trying to pull us together. So all of what you see now, the permanent forum, etc., started back in 2000. So fast forward, what's happening? We're in the UN decade, ocean decade. We just came out of COP. There's going to be a summit on the future. Now, I operate as a global futurist. I'm an engineer. So I'm going to focus our issue on that. Let's look at what's coming in the pike. We have AI, right, which now is already changing the whole education framework and the future of work. And this is just the tip of AI. People don't know what to do. The world doesn't know what to do. We have synthetic biology, which means it's going to affect your food security and the whole change of how nature operates. We have obviously the ocean, so it's water security, food security, health security, human security. And the biggest one for me besides ocean is space. Why? Because every single communication system you use comes from satellites. So we know Africa is really trying to move quickly to jump on the space issue. So Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Egypt has decided that they'll be the chair of that movement. But we have to build at the base. So my interest in this whole conversation, because there's so much to cover, is one, how do we ensure that coming out of the UN Summit of the Future, maybe this Black Women's Roundtable can ensure that they're visible, because it's going to be in Nairobi, right? I can't make it to Nairobi, but if we have people who are in Kenya who are of like mind, and I self like mind, because you have to understand it's a game. You have to understand when I am told that I am not promotable because it appears that I'm working in the interests of the Caribbean region when I'm working in the Caribbean region of the institution. What does that mean? So I'm just saying the system, even those of us who work inside the system, not everybody who works in the system is going to be like me and stick my neck out and get stripes on my back because I believe in the issue more than I believe in my promotion. So at the same time, we have to find ways to work like a Nancy. All of you know who a Nancy is. I need to say no more than that. By the way, please buy my book, Smart Futures for a Flourishing World. It's the only futures book written by a black woman with a Nancy in it. So here's what. So Black Women's Roundtable, can we globalize a conversation around these futures issues? And here's what I am doing to start. I am trying to support the engineering schools. I'm an engineer. I'm trying to support the engineering schools. I was in Kenya last year. I self-funded out of my own birthday money a conference to launch an analog space research station. But I'm trying to build it through the engineering schools. So I'm talking to people now in Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Kenya. And I really would like to find more people on the ground. That's one thing. Second thing, for those of you who are already organized, and where we organize, the labor unions are organized, the schools are organized, the churches are organized, and these are fairly deep institutions. You have to begin focusing on the finance. So for you, the credit union movement is going to be a space where you have to begin to focus on ensuring, as governments move to digital currency and those issues, you are again not left behind, because we don't understand. A lot of education and training has to be done. So I think just putting two things on the table, but give money and education through the engineering schools. Why? AU 2063, if the engineering schools are not ready, what Crystal Jackson is doing in terms of supporting these tech hubs, we want to add it into the engineering hubs. We want to see how we can tie our HBCUs back into Africa. A lot of work is happening. I'm doing this in Africa, the Caribbean, and here. So I have Morgan State I'm embedded in. I'm embedded in 3 universities in Caribbean with Space Advocates Club, starting where I can with no money. I mean, I have no funding. I do what I can with what I have. So Jamaica, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, I'm trying to build out Grenada. I really need support and help to sort of get more people behind this futures movement and help me build out the platform I have. I sit on the global board of the World Future Studies Federation, so I'm pretty visible now in the space. So please, I need help. I really need help. And my book, Smart Futures for a Flourishing World, it's in my handbag. I'll show it to you. It's online, but it's a fun book. It has a 90 stories where I talk about the mythology of how we create change. And it also has a very simple guideline as to how you can begin to think about the future and design your projects, plans, policies, very easy to read, fun to read, and it has stories. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So you give. Smart Futures for Flourishing Worlds.
Good afternoon once again, sisters. Good afternoon, sisters and the good brothers in the room. I am Barbara Perkins. I'm the co-founder of the International Black Women's Public Policy Institute. I am also a proud member of the Black Women's Roundtable. I am also a good friend to that woman, Sarah, where is she, McKenzie, that I come to know by being at the Black Women's Roundtable. And last but not least, I feel like I'm at home with each of you. And Felicia, to your point, I didn't think you were crazy, but I thought I was, because I would walk into rooms in 2009 and talk about building the bridge between women on the continent and women here. And folks would shake their heads and say, that's nice. And you know how you feel when someone like pats you on the head, but they're really not listening? And I don't think it was because women didn't want to do that. It was how. It was, what do we do? Because so much work has gone into keeping us apart, keeping us away from each other. So putting that back together was not as simple. I'm a girl still inside who grew up in the Bahamas. And I went to the Bahamas when I was 6 years old. I was born in the States in Miami. I went there at 6 years old to live with my great-grandaunt, who was helping my mother out, who was a single parent with 5 kids, and which is what we do today still. And when I arrived there, even at 7 years old, I wasn't sure if that was my place. And for 10 years, I felt a bit out of place. But it wasn't the women, it was me. It was something inside that God was planting inside of me that said, you don't belong in one place. You're going to find yourself in many different places. So fast forward, I hooked up with this woman called Dorothy Irene Height. And when I met Dr. Height, I was thirsty for black women. I was living in California in a community that didn't have a lot of black people. And when I met Dr. Height, it was a time in my life at 29 years old when I really needed black women. And some of us right now really need black women. The sister said early, I think it was Crystal who said, about our own pain, our own hurt. We are all suffering. Now, we do know how to put on lipstick. We know how to put on our galas. We know how to dress it up. But black women are in pain. I don't care where you are. We all have something emotional that we're dealing with, whether it is ourselves remembering the trauma or whether it's the experience you had getting here today. Whether it's getting on an elevator when people think you're invisible. We are managing that every day. What I have set up myself to do for the rest of my life is to work to build the gaps, close any open spaces between you and I. I don't care what the geography says. There is no difference between what I feel. We saw this yesterday at the Solidarity Center. Mel, we broke into 4 groups separately. Asked the same questions. What are the issues that are impacting black women in your country? When we came back for the report out, it was the very same things in every country. Am I right? We are all feeling the same thing. There is no thing that should ever separate us. And so at the International Black Women's Public Policy Institute, we're a policy shop, yes. And those of us who want to do policy will keep doing that. But more than that, we are solution focused. What can we do to build the bridge, repair, not build, because the bridge was built when we got here. But we have to repair the broken bridges between us. What can we do? One of the things that this organization is doing, and I think this is a tangible outcome, we said, Dr. Height, make the call, the women will show up, and the agenda will emerge. Quote, Dorothy Irene Height. So we said, what do we do best? We can make the call. Where are we going to convene? We are great conveners. That's what this is. This little sampling of the UN. We are conveners. Dr. Height said, make the call, the women will come, and just like yesterday, the agenda will emerge. So we've made a call. And that call is to bring women together under the Black Women's Embassy. the first and only Black women's embassy in the world. Yesterday I showed a film, a little video. I won't show it today, but maybe on Friday. And it talks about what we intend to do at this embassy. First of all, I don't have the agenda. The agenda comes from all of us. And I am so proud. Yes, we do a lot of humanitarian work. My first trip to the continent was with Dr. Haidt to Senegal. I had no idea why I was there. I just carried a purse, pushed a wheelchair, and I was in the room. Sometimes you just need to be in the room, like today. But someone has to make the call. So thank you to the Black Women's Roundtable for making the call, not just here at home, but there are 16, I believe, countries represented here today. So the call's been made in the U.S., in Clayton County, Georgia. We are building the first and only Black women's embassy in the world. And what we're looking for from you, because we're all in it, there is a seat for you. We are looking for a campus that will hold all of us. Whenever you come to the U.S., you have a place. That's where we will convene. All I need is your signature. All I need you to do is say yes. Please take down this email address. ibwppi.org. Go to the homepage. Say yes to the embassy. That's all we need. We want to be able to say 50,000 Black women said yes. Thank you.
We answer the call, and we're going to keep answering that call, because your vision is not just needed, it's an imperative. So I'm going to just turn the mic right back over to you to introduce our one of our guests in the house, and I know someone that you are close with in getting this vision into a reality. And so, Robert, we love you, and turn it over to you. And I'm going to step out of the way for a few minutes. Is that all right? Okay.
So I have to stand up for this because I do believe in protocol. I just love being in my skin. And today, I love being in this skin even more. The woman that I'm going to introduce you to, what I love about Black women, we can rise, we have all the titles. But what she said to me today is, you know, I don't want all that fuss. Just tell them who I am, let me come up. But do you know how hard it is to get to the level of an ambassador? I mean, you can imagine my sister, Ambassador Hilda Suka-Mafudze. I'm going to talk to you and hold your hand at the same time. Came to this country in 2021. We met shortly after she came. The friend who introduced us in a formal capacity, and we were supposed to be formal. And about 10 minutes into the introduction, we looked at each other and said, we're not doing that. And our friend dropped us off because we insisted on being with each other so that we could get to know each other. We wanted to get around the titles. And I said to her, what can I do to help you here? I understand the protocol. I understand the male world that you are in. And I understand the voices of the women who are depending on you to represent them. And within 6 months, this sister called me and said, I want to do something for women. Okay, this part can't go in the film, okay? I want to do something for women, but I need you to make the call, and I'll host you. We showed up with a class of 22 women graduating from our Global Leadership Academy to the African Union, where she represents 54 countries, and she hosted us. We didn't pay a dime. There was no exchange. It was her sending a message that I'm here and I'm going to do something. Not only was she there, she had 6 sitting Black women ambassadors waiting for us. I give you my dear friend and sister, mother and grandmother, keeper of the community, founder of an NGO in Zimbabwe. Yes, ma'am. My friend, Ambassador Hilda Suka. With you.
Oh, is that so?
But you don't have to sit. You stand.
Okay. All right. Samala, samala. Wow. What a generous introduction, my sister. Don't go emotional. We have a lot to do. We have a lot of work to do. We have to keep ourselves strong. And as we have always done as a woman, it's now where we are here at this stage, where we are saying to ourselves, we got to work together. We got to make a difference. Yes, because if we don't count on each other, no one will. Yes, we have got to do it, and they do it to the ultimate of our ability. I resonate with the songs the ladies were singing. They are from South Africa. I'm originally a South African. I'm in Ndebele. I was born in Bulawayo, which is the second city of Harare, of Zimbabwe. And so grew up in Zimbabwe, born and bred in Zimbabwe. And I came a long way, as she was saying. But anyway, when we met, it was magnetic, let me put it that way. It was really magnetic. And the person who introduced us, another African woman who introduced us, we don't even see her these days. Sometimes we bump into her, and sometimes I tell her I'm meeting Barbara and whatever. But we're just meeting now and do what we are supposed to do. I'm representing the 55 member states. Yes. And they're looking at the numbers that people talk about in terms of number of women is larger than the number of men. So just imagine the 55 member states. How many women are there? There are many. And what are we doing? We should make a difference. I came a long way. I represented Mondoro constituency as a member of parliament in my country. But it was with tears. Yes. Being 9 candidates vying for the same constituency, 8 of them were men. And I was the only woman. And they were fighting me tooth and nail. And they would make sure that maybe the following day, I shouldn't see the following day. But I had support. I had support in that constituency. And as one speaker spoke here, she said something, that's her, Barbara. God was defining me for the future. I didn't know. Yes, I didn't know. But even before the election day, which was the following day, Daily News called me and asked, are you going to make it? And I had all that confidence. And I said, yes, I will make it. And I was from the opposition. I wasn't from the ruling party. I made it, yes. But that's how I cut my teeth into this world that I'm in. And just to get to the point of us who are here, gathered here, my position is so unique. It's so unique, I must have talked about the numbers, but this position is so unique. And it's upon us to use this position. Yes. I want to be a connector. Something was being said here. I want to be able to connect the women here and to connect to the people who are on the continent. I must say, you all spoke so well, these ladies who came up here. You spoke so well, and and someone spoke about, I don't remember, that lady, that friend of mine. She spoke about Agenda 2063. This is African Union with Agenda 2063 and its flagships. What are the flagships? AFCFTA. The good thing in African Union, we've built the policy frameworks. And we have said, in whatever that comes up, women have to be found there. African Union has come up with the Gawe, gender, they call it what? Gender equity, women empowerment. And these are some of the frameworks that they've come up with. AFCFTA, for the economic development. And the good thing, AFCFTA is running with the issue to say, women have to be the priority. That's the good thing. And that's why I'm saying there are policy frameworks. We are not alone, but we have to go and benefit in what has been put in place. It is ours, but as long as we're organized. I want to, looking at this paper, it's because I have not met the organizers of this event. And I am so humbled to say, well done. I think I have names here. Yes. I have to read a little bit of my speech. Though I was going, I was going all over because I was so excited. I'm so excited because I'm amongst you. Yes, I really want to extend a warm welcome to each of you in the 13th Annual Women of Power Summit. Oh, Women of Power Summit. Hosted by the Black Women Roundtable and the Solidarity Center. I've talked of my capacity. I've talked of my position and what I can do, the unique position that I'm holding. And how many, this is a world capital. This is Washington, world capital. And how many women ambassadors are in here? I don't want to talk of other ambassadors, but let me just ask, this African women ambassadors, she said it. Now there are 9. 9. Yes, we are pushing. It's an insignificant number, if I may say, because look at how many embassies are in this country. Yes. So we need more of these women in this position. And they will also hold in this position the connecting and connection to ensure women here in the US are also connected with the women on the continent. Yes. And it is also crucial to recognize that the most pressing issues facing black women across the globe are often shared. I would want to say the challenges that we find in my country, the challenges that we hear about this side, I actually all over, they are the same. And what are we supposed to do? I know what you were saying when I was coming in. Yes, we got to build our own home, the embassy role that we're talking about. We got to build that, which welcomes our women, wherever they are coming from. If we don't give them the prestige, who will? Yes. So it's upon us. It is upon us. And I also want to say to my brothers, we are actually, we are your mothers. So we will not. So when you're talking, you sometimes say to yourself, oh my God, are we throwing our children away or we are forgetting about them? No, you're our children. And what we do as mothers is to ensure we actually make sure all our children are safe. And all we want from you is support on what we are doing. Yeah, I've worked with Barbara. She opened my eyes. She opened my mentality. I mean, yes, I was here for a short time. But Barbara gave me the confidence. Yes. She said, no, we can do whatever you want us to do. And I said, I also want to learn from you. Yes, I'm in the position. This position is ours. It's not mine alone. I become stronger because of you who will be supporting me, who make me, and I know I have a base. And that's why I'm excited being at that position, and I'm excited to be amongst you. So this connection that I talked about, we started it when we ran this, the 24 women that you talked about, who were graduating, and all ambassadors were there, the women ambassadors. And we learned a lot. And I would want to be found in your space. I will tell you, yes, we can be 7, we can be 8, we can be 9 women ambassadors. Having represented my country, Zimbabwe, in Sudan and South Sudan, I used to be so hungry to be amongst women. Just to be amongst sisters, for me to learn other things. I cannot just stand there and want to be like a man. No. But it has been a journey, and I will say I will use my position to make a difference to my life and your lives and our children and from all over the world. I would want to meet the Zimbabweans who are here, who are coming from my country. And thank you for giving me this time to talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh,
Okay, come on. Sarah and Solange, y'all come down. Barbara, you stay in. You stay in. I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm just full. And such a time as this, we are together. Sarah, our next guest.
Yes. So we're going to spend the next 10, 15 minutes talking to our sister here, Jamila, who's a senior advisor to the U.S. Trade Representative. And Jamila is our sister. She, you know, when you think about, she's like, from the Bahamas. Hello. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamila to give her more time to talk, but thank you so much for coming. Jamila, I love it when she comes hang out with us.
So do you want me to sit or stand?
No, you can, what you want to do? You want to stand?
Well, I feel like if the ambassador, Her Excellency, if she stood, then I have a duty and a responsibility to stand too. No, oh well, you're sitting.
No, go ahead.
So maybe let me just begin with this. My sisters, 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 my sisters. I have been waiting for this moment all day long. This is the chicken soup for my soul. This is the nourishment that I needed. I was surprised to walk in and see my good friend, President Losi, here all the way from South Africa. And then I turn around and I see more friends over. Like, I'm not going to say any more names because I'm going to get in trouble. Let me begin with this. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you in sisterhood and in solidarity in this moment and at this time. My name is Jamila Thompson. I serve as Senior Advisor and Acting Chief of Staff for the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. I am the first Black woman to serve in either role. And it is, I'll just say this walking over, I also serve for the first Asian American, the first woman of color to be Senate confirmed to serve in this position. Ambassador Catherine Tai. She is a member of the President's Cabinet. She is the President's Chief Negotiator, Advisor, and Spokesperson when it comes to U.S. trade and investment policy. And I had no idea what this job would entail when I took it, either one. I spent almost 20 years working on the Hill, and I think I saw my good soar Melanie for a second. My heart is a little bit heavy and my mind is a little bit scattered because my mentor, my friend, my big sister on the Hill, Carlotta Scott, whom many of you may know, passed away, and I found out on Sunday. She was the person when I worked for Congresswoman Barbara Lee who found me, who mentored me, and gave me a pathway to work for Congressman John Lewis and Congresswoman Barbara Lee, the mothers of the anti-war movement and the fathers of the nonviolent movement in Congress. It is a distinct and unique privilege, and I would not be in this position were it not for her. And so my heart is just broken, and I'm a little bit fragile. And when I came over, Ambassador Tai gave me a pep talk. She said to tell you that she loves you, she appreciates you. She knows that she would not be in her position, that the president would not have the most diverse cabinet in the history of our nation were it not for you, were it not for the solidarity, the leadership, the vision, the persistence, the consistency, the strength of Black women. And when I took this role, after working for Congressman Lewis, and she was the chief trade counsel on the House Ways and Means Committee, so I knew her, but I didn't really know her. And when we did a video call before she was confirmed to the Senate, she said, my way of grieving was that I watched every single video, every single speech that he gave before the House Ways and Means Committee. I recognize the fact that he thought about economic policy and everything that he did, and that he realized that that was the next and the most important part of the civil rights movement. And Jamila, what I ask you to do in this role is to give me the same counsel that you would give him. That's what the job is. And we have a president and we have a vice president who doubled down on that mission And that directive on day one was saying that equity would be a core component of the whole of government work. And we have refused in the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative to let those words sit on paper. And so for the first time, just 2 weeks ago, for the first time in the history of the United States, for a consistent 4 years, racial and gender equity have been at the cornerstone of the President's trade policy agenda. And every single element of everything we do, whether it is industrial policy, whether it is digital and services, whether it is agriculture and farmers, whether it is textiles, inclusivity, advancing racial and gender equity are the cornerstones of our work. And we refuse for those words to sit in paper. We need to make them real. We need to make them actionable. And most importantly, I will say to you, sisters, we have to ensure that these pillars, this work, this progress is not torn down and is forgotten. So that's part of my request to you, is to ask, to beg, to plead, to hold us accountable. Because the reality is this, is that it's not even just a quote unquote woke issue. It's a matter of inequality and correcting for the history and the legacy of what trade has been. And Ambassador Tai, the president, the vice president, they go all the way back to the transatlantic slave trade. And they recognize the history, you know, working for Congressman Lewis. We worked very hard and creating and establishing and funding the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. And you know, for those of you who've had an opportunity to visit, what that ground floor looks like when you see that triangle of atrocity. And we know the legacy and the remnants of colonialism are built into what we're trying to correct for to this day. And we take that work very seriously. So there are a few elements that I would just like to highlight for your awareness of where we're going. And I forgot to begin with this, just what this day is, right? Yesterday was the anniversary, the Equal Pay Day. For me as a Delta, this is also the anniversary for the March for Women's Suffrage, and our first act to have, hey Sora, our first act of social action, and the fact that we as Black women refused to be at the back of the line, in the back of the space, that we took our rightful space. And even though it took until 1965 to realize what voting rights and what participation look like in a democratic process. And so there's an inequality component to it for which we also have to correct and be mindful and intersectional and thoughtful. So when the president is speaking about investing in care workers, when the president is speaking about access to affordable and safe health care, when the president is speaking about ensuring that pregnant workers and nursing mothers have space, when we're trying to close the equal pay wage gap and recognize that it's not going to be until July 27th for the Black Women's Equal Pay Day. When we look at the investments that were announced just this morning in terms of transportation and infrastructure, and the fact that there are historic reasons why Black and brown communities were divided and left out when it comes to what the potential of the realization of investments could look like. When it comes to setting the table with workers at every single instance. And when we go to South Africa and we had the AGOA Forum, the African Growth and Opportunity Act Forum, and for the first time in November last year, we set the table with Black women leader voices from the continent and from the United States. That's the way that we're trying to show up. It also means that we have to be very real about where there are data gaps that exist. And so people will say, oh, well, you just have this in your mind. This cannot be real. This cannot be true. And so we asked for an independent, in the first year, she asked for an independent investigation into the distributional effects of trade and trade policy by race, by ethnicity, by gender, by orientation, by region, by ability. And what we found were a few things. First is that Black and brown workers in the United States suffered under past trade policies. The second is that there was absolutely no accounting whatsoever for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, Alaska Natives, or American Indians. So we have no idea what 30, 50 years of globalization has been and the impact on those communities. But it gave us our marching orders for how to do better. We also asked, just thinking ahead, that the investigation independent by the U.S. International Trade Commission is repeated 5 times every 3 years. So that means for the next 15 years, we ask that academics, that researchers participate and to hold us accountable, conduct research, close the data caps, and ensure that this work and these questions continue. What's fascinating is the response to what the distributional effects questions looks like, and the fact that other economies are like, oh, well, inequality is dangerous to me, especially after the pandemic, especially after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and food insecurity, where we have to be mindful and thoughtful because inequality leads to fragility, leads to a decline in democracy. And if you don't factor in Black women, if you don't factor in workers, if you don't factor in micro and small and medium-sized enterprises in addition to the bigs, if you're not thoughtful and you're mindful, because trickle-down economics doesn't work. Nobody is satisfied by a trickle of water. Nobody is satisfied by a trickle of water. I'm thirsty right now. I only had a trickle come in and I would like some more. And the president says we must build the economy from the middle out and from the bottom up. And so we have to make that real. We're also changing the way that we do our probable economics effects analysis so that we're asking the question about what the potential impact could be of our trade policies before we take them. And if we don't have the data information, if it's not available, we're working with our interagency partners to close those gaps and to answer those questions. The next part is when we're thinking about supply chains and the fragility. And the ambassador speaks quite a bit about, I mean, I'll just say it, nobody was thinking about toilet tissue and, and mask. I still wear my mask and all of the things that were so difficult to get during the pandemic. And while people thought the trade and investment policy didn't affect them, the pandemic made it very real that it was all of us. And USTR, we're a member of the Executive Office of the President. She's a part of the cabinet. We do not have all of the shiny things that the other big departments and agencies have. What we do have are the rules and the enforcement. And so if we are the ones who are designing the rules of the future, we need to make sure that we have the rules right. And part of it is the process. In a representational democracy, we should not be making decisions in Washington, at the White House, in the Capitol, without going out and meeting and speaking with people where they are. And then ensuring that what they say, how they say it, what their experiences are, asking with respect to have a seat at their table, in addition to expanding the table so that they gain their rightful place at ours, that everything we hear is reflected in the resulting policy. That what we're doing is not just putting it on a shelf to look pretty, but that your voices, your concerns are heard and reflected in what we're doing. So one is on the on the supply chain. So right now, we just published a Federal Register notice asking some critical questions in terms of supply chain resiliency and ensuring that when we write the rules, that we have the information that we need when we're negotiating with our trading partners, wherever they may be, so that we're building our middle class in partnership and not in conflict. That the value, when we talk about value chains, is not concentrated in certain spaces, but especially as it relates to our brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora, especially as it relates to developing countries around the world, especially when it relates to the subject matter that we're here today, the global south, that trade policy is done right. On inclusivity and trade policy, we did the same process. We used the U.S. International Trade Commission investigation on the distributional effects. We looked at the recommendations from the roundtable discussions, from the literature review, from the hearings, and we took them and went one by one to figure out where the opportunities and what our action plans were. Then we asked a broad question, again through a Federal Register notice, to ask for information about how we could apply these lessons and what inclusivity looks like in trade and investment policy. Because let me be clear, before this administration, the United States would show up and say gender equity, equality, and economic empowerment are not key and central to trade and investment policy. So that in and of itself is historic and unprecedented. And when the United States has the opportunity, like we do with Kenya, who said, we would like to think about inequality. We would like to think about women's economic empowerment, and we would like to think about persons with disabilities and vulnerable communities, and for the United States, this means underserved communities. That the United States is not just responding to what we think is right for Black and brown workers, what we think is right for Asian American and indigenous communities, what we think is right for persons with disabilities, what we think is right for rural communities, what we think is right for textile workers. We have to listen and learn and educate ourselves so that when we take the pen, we're doing the best job that we can. The last thing I'll say is this. At times, it can feel overwhelming and frustrating. It can feel as if progress is extremely slow. I go back to a few reminders in terms of the arc, the moral arc of the universe, but also the reality of the gravity of the situation and the moment. And that is this: if we don't do right by Black women, wherever they reside in the diaspora, because we're here in Washington, D.C., we're close by. You're leaving everybody else, because what basket captures Black women lifts up everybody else. So if we get this right, everything else is easy. The AGOA Forum, the African Growth and Opportunity Act Forum, is this year, likely in the late summer. Last year was the first time we had labor, civil, and business interests all together with the trade ministers. Our goal this year is to do it bigger and badder than ever. I don't know that we can do that because we just got our budget cut, but I'm hopeful. And then to my Caribbean sisters and brothers, to my sisters who are throughout the African diaspora, I just want to be clear on one point. We fully recognize and appreciate, as a follow-up to the President's U.S. African Leaders Summit, that the United States is the sixth region of the African Union, that our brothers and sisters in Brazil and Honduras and Colombia and the Bahamas and Jamaica and Barbados and Peru are part of the diaspora. And so on every single visit, whether it is in Honduras and meeting with the Garifuna community, or in Brazil and meeting with Afro-Brazilians, or in Kenya, or in South Africa, We sit and we set the table with women worker voice. Afro and indigenous, because on the continent, you're also indigenous. And that trade and investment policy is truly a force of good and realizes the hopes, the dreams, the ambitions of the civil and human and labor rights movement that are long overdue. It is an honor to be with you. I thank you for who you are, for what you do. And I'll just close by giving Sarah just the biggest hug ever, because I love you so much.
Thank you, Jamila. Having good people like you in the administration is important, right? It's important. The work you do is important. Thank you for coming, spend time with us. Yeah, I appreciate you too. Thank you. We got to do a picture.
On, right? Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Sister Jamila Thompson. Can we give her a round of sister love? And of course, our sister Sarah. How's everybody feeling? You feeling all right? So we're going to have move right into close to our closing for now with a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful moment in this day. So if you all will cue up the introduction of a sister that needs no introduction, but we love you, so we want to introduce you the way. And oh, yes, thank you, I forgot that. So can we just take a moment to be and just feel her story. my sisters and my brothers. Our sister, give her some sisterly and brotherly love. Sister Caroline Wanga. There we go.
Did it do something now? You can hear me? Wonderful.
I'm a fan girl. Can I say I'm a fan girl? Every time I see this sister, I don't care where we are. First and foremost, I want to say this before I give the formal titles and everything.
Yes, ma'am.
The first time I met you probably was at a reception or whatever. The second time I met you probably was at Essence. The third time probably at a White House something like that. And you know what? I don't care when I meet her, you shower folks as if we knew each other for 30 years.
Yeah.
And when I told you the little bit about what we were doing, you say, girl, we're there.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell you that I appreciate you. And I know the formal part of what you do is you are the president and CEO of Essence Ventures, that also, as I learned, about Afro-Punk and BeautyCon.
Yes.
Did I get it right?
All
Yes.
three of those companies.
So give her a sister and brotherly love about that. I'm going to read this because I thought this through. And I don't want to. I don't want to get thrown off. Your presence here is a testament to your dedication and commitment to empowering Black women on a global scale. As the president and CEO of Essence Ventures, you are taking Essence to higher heights. You are exposing the world to Black culture in new and innovative ways and transforming what beauty looks like. Can we give her another round of thank you? You and your Essence Ventures team are playing a unique and pivotal role in championing the voices and experiences of Black women in the U.S. and abroad, and creating spaces where our stories can be celebrated and amplified. Caroline Wanga,
yes, ma'am.
You are phenomenal.
Thank you.
And you are just a bad sister.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate the invitation to fellowship with you today. As Melanie said, we see each other several places. What you spoke about the way that I interact with people is what I learned from the communities of women that raised me, right? I was taught that behavior. I learned that behavior through my eyes. Raised by strong women, always been around strong women, no matter where I've lived. I didn't know there was a different way. And so I honor the women who brought me to this place by behaving as they did, as a sisterhood, and blood had nothing to do with kindness. Right, and that is what I learned, and that is what I want to be a part of my legacy. There's this company, I don't know whose company it is. I just remember the name of the company is Human.Kind, and their slogan is "Be Both." And so that is what I try to live.
And now I'm going to use a quote.
Come on with a quote then. What did I say?
I said it. And it just stuck with me. I said, I'm going to use this. I got to put this out here.
Yes, ma'am.
You said, who you are is who you are. If you can't be who you are, where you are, change where you are, not who you are.
Yes.
So would you please share with us who you are, right? Who you are and how your life's journey has brought you to now serving as a president and CEO of Essence Ventures.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to. I told y'all I'm verbose, so whenever my time's up, just cut off the mic. I'm going to start in a very important place, which is right there. I'm a Kenyan girl. Yeah, I was born in Kisumu. My mother is Luo, my father is Luya, so we'll talk about that later. But I'm a Kenyan girl, was born in Kenya. I was born into a country and a place where I was literally told there was nothing I could not do. There was never you have to do this to do that. Everybody looked like me. I was told I was smart enough that there literally was no limitation. I just had to choose. That's the environment that I grew up in. When I was about 8 months old, we went to Canada. My mom got her PhD in Canada. Then we came back to Kenya. We're in Kenya for a little bit, and then my dad came to the U.S. To get his doctorate. So both my parents have their doctorates. And that was the first time I realized that what I looked like mattered to people. So came to the U.S. to Minnesota, bad choice. Should have started somewhere else. I didn't know what this white stuff on the ground is that y'all call snow, right? So you can, just the cultural transition in and of itself was just heavy. And I was the oldest, and I was only 10. And so I give you that part of the story because having grown up in an environment where I was literally told there was nothing I could not do, to go to an environment where people were telling me I couldn't do things because of what I looked like was drastic. Because I'd never heard the message of limitations. I'd also never heard the message of obstacles created by socioeconomic status or by oppression and discrimination. Like, yes, Kenya has its issues. I'm not saying it's innocent. But the things that I was encountering as a 10-year-old in Roseville, Minnesota did not match what I had been taught. And my parents weren't equipped to help me through it because they didn't know what the heck it was either. They were from Kenya too, right? And so that really started the beginning of shrinking myself. Because and junior high or middle school is just tough for anybody in the U.S. I mean, everybody just comes to school ready to hurt somebody when you're in like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, right? Like you haven't done nothing, if you haven't picked on 7 people, and it's just a hard time in general from adolescence. So being, and where I lived was a global place. So I lived in international graduate student family housing. So everybody I lived with was from another country. So I was fine at home. When I went to school, and I was 5'8" at the age of 11, so I was very tall. I'm somewhere between a tenor and an alto in my voice. In the morning, I might be a baritone. I have size 11 feet, and I had an accent, and I was dark, and my food smelled funny. And so my daily exercise was 2 things every day. Avoiding the people who made it their business to take something about me and make it painful. And then number 2 was to make sure nobody knew how smart I was. Those were my 2 plans. Why? Because those 2 lanes brought pain. If I could go through the day not being noticed, it was a successful day. Because being noticed came with just the brutality of junior high. Plus, then I'm different. I'm not black yet, right? I'm not African American. I'm not American. I'm not even African. I'm Kenyan. And I don't even know what that means at 10 years old compared to everybody. And so literally to survive, I started to take away everything that I could that made me different so I could spend my day unnoticed, which was so foreign to how I was raised. And my parents noticed it, but they didn't understand what to do with it, so they were just like, get over and go to school. Right? We Africans, you know, if you ain't going to school, I'm not talking to you. And so because my parents couldn't be helpful, although they loved me, I was figuring out my own survival. So I used to wear shoes that were too small because I didn't want anybody to know I wore a size 11. I would not, so my mom would make me lunch because there were 4 kids, and so she didn't want to pay for all our lunches. So my mom would make me lunch, and I wouldn't eat it because it smelled, and so I'd go hungry all day. I would eat it when I got home, before my mom got home from work, so she didn't know I wasn't eating lunch. But the only reason I wasn't eating lunch is because when I opened it, it was my food, and it didn't smell like the cafeteria food, and people would make fun of me, so I'd rather be hungry. I also started to get rid of my accent. People are always laughing when they hear me talk now. They're like, you're not from Kenya. What's this accent? I worked really hard to get rid of it because it was another thing that differentiated me and brought negative attention. And I remember the word purple is the last word I figured out how to say without an accent. And I wouldn't say that word for 2 years until I could get rid of it. And so, you know, that's 6th grade that I start doing that. So that began this journey of shrinking Caroline for the sake of survival and to not be noticed. I would intentionally, I remember I used to take tests. You know how you had those bubble sheets with the pencil and the bubble sheet? And because I was so smart, I would make a design to make sure I got them wrong. because my brain always wanted to go to the right answer, but I didn't want to do well on the test. So I would literally like make a happy face with the circles because I couldn't stop myself from filling in the right answer. So I had to find something else. So I would just turn it upside down, not pay attention to what question it was, and like make a happy face or a heart. Because I didn't want the teacher to announce that I'd done well on another test. And so I'd fail it on purpose. So from 6th grade probably to about 10th grade, that was my existence. Then I had 3 little brothers, and then I had parents that were confused about what happened to the child that they raised confidently now that she's here. I didn't resemble who they had born. I wasn't bad. I didn't behave badly, but all the confidence that they had instilled in me had diminished to the point where when I came home, I would just skip dinner and go to sleep and cry because my parents wanted to talk to me about it and I couldn't explain it, and they so desperately wanted to help me, and so it would become this tension-filled conversation every day I came home from school, and I just couldn't handle it. So I'd just go to my room and cry. So I remember we moved to Minneapolis, which had a few more brown faces in it than Roseville. And that was where I found sports. So I started to enjoy life a little bit because I started playing volleyball, basketball, and track. And I loved that. And so I was getting my confidence back. I didn't care that they liked me in sports. People just weren't making fun of me anymore, and that was a win. So I was in a track scholarship for college and got pregnant my first semester. So I got pregnant at 17 years old. And now the conversation was people renegotiating my potential without my permission. And what happened, and rarely was it with words. It was with eyes. It was with my cousins weren't allowed to talk to me as if pregnancy is contagious. It was the fact that I could have gone to Harvard yesterday and today you're telling me to go to community college. Nothing wrong with community college, but why was I wasn't pregnant yesterday and I could go to Harvard. I'm pregnant today and have to go to a community college? Like, give me a minute to just I'm a 17-year-old parent. So I remember, because it became so isolating, and there was a period in my life where I liked being in isolation because I could survive. I had been in this athletic living that gave me confidence again, and then again, another reason why I got to get small. So now I lived small and defiant. And what I mean by that is I would never talk to anybody. I didn't talk to my family members. I didn't talk to cousins, because people would always ask me weird, intrusive, inappropriate questions that I didn't have time to answer, right? Like, what are you going to do for daycare? I don't know. She ain't born yet. Right? Like, you wouldn't ask a 36-year-old mother the second day after she's pregnant where the kid's going to go to daycare. Why are you asking a 17? I don't know. Right? But remember what that pressure creates for me as a 17. Okay, so I need to have that figured out now. Sheesh. I didn't have insurance. I didn't know how I went to a sliding fee scale clinic to get my prenatal care. In fact, I didn't know what gender child I was having because I couldn't afford another ultrasound. So about 2 months before I was due, I went to a store and bought boy, girls, and girl clothes because I knew I could return them within 60 days. So whichever one I didn't have, I was going to take the clothes back. Right? So now I start to live in defiance because the way that people were engaging with me caused me to simply prove them wrong. So I became this really stoic, aggressive, and clinical parent. Nobody's gonna say she's not clean. She's gonna be clean. You're not gonna say she didn't eat. She ate, right? I became that kind of defiant parent because I felt like everybody was waiting for something to go wrong. And I was not even gonna let them think it. So I became this really, and if you meet my daughter today, we are very close, but we're not relational because I was so stoic. My love was hard because I was fighting perceptions and trying to figure out how to be an adult too. So that, Cadence is my daughter's name, so that started an era where I spent 18 years being Cadence's mom. I was not Caroline Wanga, I was Cadence's mom. And so when I got pregnant, I dropped out of college, which you know what that means to 2 doctoral parents from Africa. Oh, the meetings, right? So I started to just have tension with my parents because every time they would say hello to me, they would start with, when are you going back to school? They would ask me that more than they would ask me, how's Cadence doing? So I stopped interacting. I moved out and minimized my interaction with my parents because I couldn't answer that question because I was just trying to figure out how to be a mom. And it was love. I'm not judging them. It was love, but I was 18. Too much was going on. I didn't have a guide. I had people who loved me and made the best decisions they could. So I started to work in nonprofit because I had worked at a summer camp and I needed a job. So I went there to ask if they had a job. They gave me a job doing youth development programs. I took it because my daughter could come with me. So I worked in different nonprofit sectors for about 7 years. And then I was told I was not going to get promoted in a nonprofit job. And I said, why am I not going to get promoted? They were like, you can do this job. I said, why? Because you don't have a college degree. And I used to say to them, I'm not going to be any smarter. I've worked here for 7 years. And you're saying I'm qualified for the job. And they're like, no, we can't give you the promotion because you don't have the degree. So now I was angry. Because now you're messing with my ability to take care of this child. And I'm not asking anybody for money. So I probably have 3 or 4 different transcripts in the state of Minnesota from every way that I tried to get my degree while working. And it just always came to a halt because of something related to my parenting needs would conflict with my school needs. I'm never going to pick school over her. And so, because I had like a part-time job, I had to get another job because I had to have somewhere to take her when I went to class. So the day job paid for my life, and I had to get another job to pay for daycare so I could go to school, right? Which meant I never saw her. And so after a couple of tries, I was working with the NAACP in Minneapolis and found out about a historically black college in Tyler, Texas, that had sought out government grant money to supplement single parents going to school. And so I went to Texas College. I visited in October, left in January, and it wasn't free, but I paid the same tuition as regular students, but the funding supplemented her living in the dorm with me without a roommate. They had vans to take them to school so we didn't have to be on a school bus schedule. She could eat in the cafeteria at no additional cost. And so for the first, and there was probably about 12 of us women that started that first cohort, it was the first time in my life that my potential had the right protocol. Because all the things that I had struggled to figure out in going to school, the school figured out. And so now my intellect starts to become comfortable returning. So I do 4 years of college in 2.5 years. That's stupid. Don't do it. But I was that driven. 21 credits a semester, January and summer. And so when I was done, I had no intention to go back to Minnesota. I had gotten out of that frozen tundra. I'm from the equator, and I'm going to fix this. End up working for the Target Corporation in Tyler, Texas. After joining the Target Corporation, end up coming back to Minnesota with Target. Went from intern to chief diversity and inclusion officer over the course of 15 years, and was sitting in a place at the top of a Fortune 50 company that makes $100 billion a year and has 400,000 employees. And my daughter graduates from high school. I end a relationship that I was in, and I'm living alone for the first time at 36 years old. I don't have a hobby. I don't know what color I like. I literally, favorite color, didn't know. What do I like to do for fun? Didn't know. Literally had no personality because I'd given it up to Recadence's mom. So it started this 36-year-old reconciling, reintroducing myself to Caroline. And so I started trying things to see if I could figure out what I like to do, what I like to watch, what my hobbies were, what my favorite color was. And I went to a developmental conference, and I was talking to somebody, and he said something to me that made me cry. So I got out of the room, and then he followed me, and I was like, leave me alone. I want to talk about my feelings. You made me talk about my feelings. But what I found out is that psychologically, I was 17 years old still. Chronologically, I was 36 years old at the top of a Fortune 50 company. And I couldn't see in me what other people could see in me. So he gave me an exercise called psychological birthdays. And I got to quietly decide anytime a moment happened, I got to have a psychological birthday and move forward a year psychologically so that I could catch my mind and my spirit up to where I actually was. And what that started was a journey of going back to reclaim all those things I had taken off over the years pride in my heritage. It was about my intellect. It was about my confidence. It was about my point of view. It was about how I wanted to dress, right? Like, over the course of the time since that moment to now, it became this journey in reclaiming, right, the things that I had taken off to survive. And it was a different confidence, because when my daughter graduates from NYU with the School of Engineering, of course all the Africans showed up to have a thing, because when one person graduates, all of us did. But I went to the store on my own, and I bought a cupcake. And I sat outside on my porch, and I put a candle in it, and I lit it. And I sang happy birthday to myself for turning 18. I didn't need anybody else there. And ever since then, that's been what happens. Now I'm sitting at Target. I'm in this D&I role. I come to work in tools sometimes. I might be in, right, my aesthetic has changed. Everything about what I love to do has started to return. And I'm in a powerful position, which means also other people are paying attention to it, and it's helping them. And then I get bored. I got bored of my job. We had phenomenal results in DEI. I didn't want to leave Target. I didn't want to leave the job, but I was looking for more work. So I was with the CEO, looking for more work, interviewing externally, whatever. Nothing worked out. I go to Ghana. Where Ghana? There. I go to Ghana with my now boss, Rich Lou Dennis. At the time, I didn't work for him. And we went to visit the slave castles. And I was excited about that, because being from Kenya, the remnants aren't the same. And so I remember talking with my dad about it, and we had this conversation about a much smaller slave trade that happened on the eastern coast of Africa that took slaves to the other way, right? Not talked about a ton, because the slaves were not allowed to procreate. And I said, well, Dad, you've told me the story of the Wangas for years. You've never mentioned an interruption of slavery. He said, well, the Wangas did what they had to do to survive. We all know those stories are there. I'd never heard it about my own lineage. And so it started this moment in my head where I went, how am I going to reconcile this? So we go to Ghana. I have a complete meltdown on the coast. I come back and I say to my CEO, I'm going to fix this. I don't know how, but I'm going to fix it. 2 months later, Rich Lou Dennis calls me to come and run Essence. I'm going to fix this. So as much I was afraid of moving into the media space, I had no qualifications at all. As much as I did not think that I could do the work to keep this cultural artifact available for Black women globally, I took the job for 2 reasons. This was the universe giving me my fix-it moment. And there is no way that I was going to allow my 7-year-old niece, Ayo, to grow up without Essence. So even if I failed, I had to save Essence. So that brings us to where we are today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How many grew up on Essence? Right? How many with the Essence Fest? How many still go to Essence Fest? How many going this year to Essence Fest? It's 30th.
This 30th birthday at the festival.
Birthday.
I'm going to work, so I can't raise my hand. I'm not going to festival, I'm going to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I want to ask you one more question.
Yep.
I'm trying to combine them.
I told you I was verbose.
No. And I didn't stop you because you were answering the questions. So I'm not going to sit up on a piece of paper and say, oh, I got to ask you this question. You started, but you shared your journey and your perspective. I'm going to take these questions and say, I think you answered them. Because it was one of them, like your heritage. We talked about that and the perspective. And I want to get into, we're here, right? How many, Sarah? Where's Sarah? Oh, Solange, Sarah. How many countries here? 13 countries here. 14. Yeah, well, sometimes it's kind of rough when we getting treated over here.
See, but not the U.S. taking an opt-out.
Oh, you know, I'm not going to get in trouble today. Yes, about that, yes. So how you saved Essence, you maintained the brand, but you've taken it global. So when I went to Essence, and several of us were there, and I was with Alfonso the other day,
Alfonso
right?
David,
Yeah,
Yep.
with the
Global Black Economic Forum.
Global Black Economic Forum. We were talking about you, right? He said, "I know she's gonna be." I said, "How you know?" But anyway, we were together, and so last year, I felt and saw the shift, right, in how even Essence Festival is global in a way that has been different, because I've been going there for, like I say, forever. That's forever, and then learning about BWR and understanding Afro. I hadn't connected the dots until we talked that day. And so how do we support that, what you're doing? And where do you see the vision of Essence Ventures and you and Richard and all of you all at the Essence family, and how do we support you, and where is it going?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give as much of an answer as I can, and then, if you want to join us in New Orleans to see a little bit more, you're more than welcome to. A couple of things I would state, right? What we know to be true about the power of Black is that we continue to be an infinite spectrum of representation, but we also continue to make strides into places and spaces maybe that we weren't before. So when Rich and I are thinking about what we want Essence Ventures to be, we want it to be this elastic thing that continues to cover the full spectrum of Black. So when we look at what Essence is and what it's founded in the Black woman. While Essence has been around for almost 50 years, if you have a streaming service and watch either OWN or Max, there is a documentary re-released in September called Time of Essence. And it was about the first 5 decades of Essence. It's actually really good. You should watch it. I wish I'd have had it when I got hired, but it wasn't there. The reason I bring that up is because we are owning really proudly that we're living in the 6th decade of Essence, the 6th episode of the documentary. And so Essence did its job to inspire Black women and to do all of that. And now Black women globally are the CEOs of home culture and community. Not the CEOs of Black home culture and community. They're the CEOs of home culture and community. And so what Essence's focus is right now is about equipping her to own the power of being CEO. Now, you add in Afropunk, and what you have with Afropunk is the Black that sometimes has been made to feel on the margins. I like comic books. I like heavy metal. I might be LGBT, right? So Afropunk was created by a community that felt like they were on the margins of Black. So bringing them into the fold helps us cover more Black folks, right? That want to have that interaction and that want safety. We don't dilute their identity. They're unique within it. But yes, they showed up at festivals so that their gathering was there too. BeautyCon was focused on undoing the damage that brands have done about defining beauty. Now, BeautyCon, before we acquired it, because it was in bankruptcy, when we acquired it, it was still basically a convention that beauty brands could bring their products to and people would come to get samples. I know I'm simplifying it, but that's pretty much what it was. And it didn't have necessarily a Black focus. It was just in general. What I have redefined BeautyCon to be is solving the biggest health crisis happening right now, which is the way that the mental health and lives of people are being deteriorated because of the superficial perception of what beauty is. And instead of understanding that that is unattainable because there are 3 Photoshops and 7 different filters, we're allowing women and men to believe that that's attainable, so they go after it, they can't get it, and so they jump off a building in New York. That is not a lie. One of the 3 women, do you guys remember when there was a Miss Universe, a Miss America, and there was 3 sisters? One of them jumped off a building 2 years ago. And she was a beauty queen. So BeautyCon, you may think that that is about products. No, it's not. It's about re-equipping people to define beauty for themselves and then holding brands accountable to engaging with people in a way that is healthy for their beauty. And calling out when they're playing a different role, but not by Essence coming and knock on your door until you need to fix things, by teaching every person out there what beautiful means. And then empowering them to not buy the products of the companies that aren't supporting their beauty. And so that covered another spectrum. So if you want to know then, so that's what covers why we are where we are. Each of those brands are individual, but we also come together. So your question would be, what does that have to do with the globe? What does that have to do with what Essence is doing right now? Two very important things. Rich and I have an audacious 100-year plan to reconnect the disconnected diaspora. We're not going to get it done in 100 years, because I'm not going to live to that age. If I do, I'm probably not going to be, I'm going to be real miserable. But what we are doing is preparing for the baton to be handed off. What does that mean? It means making Essence Festival virtual so that anybody on the globe can watch it. What does that mean? It means doing things like what I did with them when we did Full Circle and brought people to Africa, bring folks from Africa here. It means making sure that we've got the right people performing and doing all the things that represent our full spectrum. That's all for entertainment, because part of what we need to teach black people to do is live at the intersection of joy and justice. You do not have to have no joy because you're fighting justice, and if you're fighting justice, you can still have joy. That is who we are intrinsically from the continent on down. We've always sat in between both. And we need to stop trying to regulate ourselves from having joy when justice is happening. Because we need the joy to fuel the justice. That's our well, right? And we get so stuck in justice that we don't have enough energy for joy. And we need to teach our next generation of black folks that it can be different. And so we're not going to dial back on entertainment and music and fun and laughter. And we're not going to cut back on that. We're going to turn it up. And we will turn it up in accordance with the justice journey. And what that justice journey, and she mentioned Alfonso David, who is my colleague in the Sundial family of brands and runs the Global Black Economic Forum, is the first thing we got to do is make sure it feels good to be black, whatever country you're in. So Essence may have done great things for black women in the US, but has it done the right things for black women in Africa, for black women in Brazil? I have a series I do called Chief to Chief. And it's interviewing women playing different chief roles so that people can be inspired by the chief within themselves. And my last one, which is actually coming out very soon, is the first black woman to be the vice president of the country of Colombia. And it was the first time I did an interview where we didn't speak the same language. And it was one of the most beautiful conversations I've ever had. But my favorite thing is, guess what her agenda is? Reparations. In Colombia. Guess where she goes? Kenya. And she was just such a wonderful model for this idea of how do we look at our global black agenda and have everybody play with the strengths that they have to help us all rise, and so that's a part of it. And then the last part is an unapologetic dedication to making economic inclusion a human right. Because what we know the battle is, we know we've got gender battles, we know we've got socioeconomic battles, we know we've got other battles to fight. Universally, black has to start to get back the value of the culture they create that is pilfered. And so the last piece over the course of the time that we will exist, and then we'll hand it off to the next generation, is that we fully intend, I have a phrase that we use all the time, the revolution must be financed at full value. And so what we are driving, whether it be the 26,000 black-owned businesses we have in New Voices that has created 36 black female millionaires since 2018, whether it's about buying Soko in Kenya, so that not because they make great jewelry, but because they have a global supply chain that can allow black people around the world to buy products from any other black company around the world. When we talk about what we want to do with wealth, this is about what we create globally, what it's worth, and charging full price. So that the wealth story of global black has within it what needs to be repaired, but also has in it what gives us actual advantage. And if we can do that work, even if we don't get it all done in this generation, if we can start that work and teach the next generation to pick it up, then we see a world where we don't have to ask anybody for anything. And we start to see ourselves be what supplies others with what they need. So for us, that's what this next chapter is about. Each of those brands expand the spectrum of black, but really we are about making sure that global black wealth starts to move forward. And we're doing that through entrepreneurship and several other programs that I don't have time to talk about. But at the end of the day, the revolution must be financed at full value, and we will make sure that that happens.
Caroline Wanga.
Sisters, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm going to ask you a favor. We're in this room. I want us to get a group shot.
So everybody stay where you are.
You gonna try to do us?
You know, oh, I got you. We're gonna turn around.
Okay, come on.
Sarah and Solandra, y'all come down. Do we stay up there, or do you want us to stand down here? Come on down. And y'all stand. Everybody stand up. We're gonna get a group shot.
And come across. So stand up and then come towards each other. There we go.
See, I felt you. I knew you was gonna want us to do.
You better choreograph.
Listen, me and Sarah Hardy
Okay.
set up.
Okay, but
I know you got it.
No. I'm not saying it that way. I'm saying we just all thinking.
That's good.
That way.
Y'all can come across the aisle. So everybody come across the aisle. Like come in as tight as you can.
Like in choir.
Yeah, like a choir. Altos, tenors,
Right.
sopranos.
Soprano 1, soprano 2. and tall people come down. Can you get up? You're a little, you can't see everybody, right?
I'm about to fix that.
Okay.
But he's coming with a chair for me. If y'all can let this gentleman come down the middle, right behind you, he's got a chair. He's gonna make this shot even greater. Y'all look amazing, all of these beautiful queens. I am honored to take your picture.
And can y'all get a video too? Can you get a video shot?
You got your camera? Your phone? Video. He got it.
Okay.
All right. Y'all stay right there. That looks amazing. Stay there.
You said suck it in?
Y'all will not put that on me. That looks great, y'all. Stay there. One more. Beauty on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Beauty!
Come on.
Now, wait a minute.
Now we got.
We gotta say it.
Yeah. What you want to say?
Black Women's Roundtable.
Black Women's Roundtable on 3. Y'all ready?
Yes.
And then after you said, yay, give me all of that. I can get some singing from the choir, all of that good stuff. Matter of fact, Black Women's Roundtable, Global Empowerment. And that's why we're here.
What about this? Black Women's Roundtable goes global.
Okay, there we go. From the head. Black Women's Roundtable goes global. So let's do this. Practice on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Black Women's Roundtable goes global.
Okay, we're gonna have to do a little bit better there. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3.
Black Women's Roundtable goes global.
Good job, y'all.
Sisters,
Good work, man. Good work.
You can sing out and dance out.
mhm. We got one. Yeah, we got a couple more words. Oh, okay. Somebody's phone. Oh, okay. So, ladies, we're just going to close. Oh, you're fine. We're just going to close out today. I cannot believe that it's ending like this, right? This one day. But, you know, my heart is full. It's like over full. I'm going to be, you know, jittery for the next couple of days because so much was discussed. And we have so much planning to do. We have so much work to do. We ain't going to spend a whole lot of time planning. We're going to get out there and do the work so we can make the change, right? Thank you all. Thank you all for bringing your full selves to this discussion today and giving to each other, right? And making BWR Global amazing. Again, we thank you all. I thank you for our choir. Y'all was on cue. That's why I say black people don't need to read the recipe. We are the recipe. So I just got a few housekeeping things I want to say. Tonight, following this at 4:30, go upstairs to the rooftop. We're going to have some more dancing, some more singing, some more reception up there. And then we'll go downstairs after that, but we'll let you know about that when we get upstairs at 6:30. Properly at 6:30. We have tight schedules. Okay. Start the opening plenary at 6:30. Okay. And so we'll let you know about that after we finish doing the rooftop, so we get folks down. And also, one more thing that we need to tell them about Friday. We have not finished. This is not the end of our global peace. Friday afternoon is our global peace, where we ask everyone to come into the room, be present. We're going to help take, like I've always been saying from day one, this is not the end. We're just the beginning of South Africa, Ghana, and Cameroon, everybody that's saying y'all singing that y'all want Black Women's Roundtable, Brazil, whatever, for everybody. I'm not going to start saying names. But come into that room on Friday at 2 o'clock, 2:45. Everyone, we're looking for your faces. We're looking for your voices in that space. And then that will be really what we call our final day for this weekend, but not our final for our global, to come into that space so we can actually do some planning out and how it looks for Black Women's Roundtable to be in your countries and how do we move it forward and how do we work it together. I love y'all sisters. Y'all as beautiful as y'all look, and I love your spirits and your soul, and thank you. See you upstairs on the rooftop.
One of the things I want to make sure that everybody knows, I feel Tanya in my ear. Tomorrow, every day for the summit, there's a theme. Today was Global Empowerment Day. Do we have a Global Empowerment Day? We had a Power Day, right? Tomorrow is Public Policy and Education Day. We in the streets and the suites and in the halls of power, right? So in the morning, early, we're going to be loading up to go to the Supreme Court. We're going to be there with the sisters from the Fearless Fund who are fighting the fight when it comes to us being able to take our own money and fund our own economic security and prosperity. So we're going to be there with them, but we're going to be pointing out we're not going anywhere. You're not going to erase us. We are the power that we seek. We can put you in, we can put you out. So we're focusing on rights, freedoms, justice tomorrow. So be there. Friday is all about Community Day. We spend time going deeper around the policies that are impacting us. And, Thursday night, we're partying with a purpose. We got Raheem Devon Thursday night, local, as well as, of course, national, international performing, where we'll be giving our Sisters Awards. Saturday, we call that It's All About You Day. We're pouring in. It's about health and wellness. We got Barbara Perkins and others who will be pouring in and giving us that inspiration that we need. We're focused on what we call being healthy, wealthy, and wise. First thing that morning, Caroline, we do every year. I have a sister who was my everything, the y'all who know her. Her name was Ruby Campbell Pulliam. And we do a walk in her memory about mental health and wellness. It's early on Saturday morning, and we will spend that day, and then we give y'all some time to just hang out and do whatever we want to do in the city. And then we close it out with Faith in Action. And we got Bishop Vashti McKenzie coming, and she's going to preach us on to the airports and the trains and planes and wherever way bicycles or walk across the street, however way you got here. So buckle up. And then in between all of that, let's keep this love going. And I got to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Y'all stand up for these two sisters who came to Mel, you got to get on the phone. Mel, we got to get this done. I'm like, I'm coming. And such a time as this. So last words of our sponsor, Solidarity Center, AFL-CIO. We would not have been able to do all of this today without you.
Well, thank you. I just want to thank the tech guys. They hung with us all day. We were walking in front of the camera. They were patient with us. It was just, we were a mess. But you guys were good, thank you. And I look forward to seeing the footage and the pictures. And then the interpreters. Boy, y'all were working it. I'm sure we got to get y'all some tea for your throats, right? But thank you all for what you've done today also, okay? And I love y'all. Let's go to the reception. Yes, let's go to the rooftop.